Muslim Marriage. Presentation by Dr. John Judes. Muslims, who practice the religion of Islam, practice a unique type of marriage. Marriage is a legally binding contract in which there is a specific, formal exchange of services between a man and a woman based on standard Islamic stipulations. In some Islamic countries, a written contract is provided by the state. Sample contracts can be found on the Internet. The details vary, such as the type and size of dowry, when it is given to the wife, and if additional wives are allowed. The contract is not normally negotiated by the woman, but by the woman's guardian and her new husband or his guardian. Because it is a contract, no wedding ceremony is needed. A woman does not negotiate and need not explicitly consent. The contract is often signed by her guardian without her consent, whether or not she is an adult. It may be signed before puberty and consummated later. The contract includes things not found in most societies, such as spaces for names of other wives and the dowry. Pictured here is a nikah certificate used in England. Note the entries for the essential dowry and whether or not it's deferred until after the marriage. Nikah means both sexual intercourse and marriage. The female need not negotiate, sign, or consent. However, for first marriages, she must provide public or private proof of her virginity. This is extremely important in Islam and leads to extraordinary painful means in many Muslim communities, such as sewing girls' clothes. It is essential that the husband or his family pay a dowry, and it's forbidden to underpay or overpay. The dowry is her personal property, but she has little control over it. Her husband can dispose of 1/3 of it without her consent. She cannot dispose of more than 1/3 without her husband's consent, and it passes to her husband at her death. Every female must have a legal male guardian no matter what her age. The guardian, in Arabic Qawamiya or Mahram, is normally a close relative who has absolute authority and makes all decisions for the female. The father or brother passes guardianship to her husband at marriage, and back if they are divorced. If no male relative is available, a judge becomes her guardian. The guardian is required by Quran 4:35, which states that all men excel over all women, no matter what their relative age, experience, maturity, status, or education. Guardians may marry off a female or may prevent marriages for any reason. Ari is common, preventing marriage in order to keep a woman's government allowance, if poor, or salary, if working. Women of all ages need permission to marry and cannot choose a mate. The guardian chooses him. Islam is polygamous. First, there is permanent marriage. Quran 4:3 states that men may have up to 4 wives at once. He can replace any wives who he divorces or who die. Existing wives cannot prevent their husbands from taking additional wives unless their contracts stipulate that. Many branches of Islam also have temporary marriages. A temporary Shia marriage is called muta, or singa or siga in Iran. It can be for any set length of time, is secret, does not require witnesses, and is not recorded by the state. Iran encourages this type of Shia marriage to reduce illegal sex. It fits the Muslim description of marriage because it includes a contract and a dowry. Special muta dating websites provide matchmaking services, procedures to follow, and statements by jurists approving the practice. Men may have as many of these temporary marriages as they like, at the same time or in succession. When the term ends, a couple can make another contract if they wish. Sunni Muslims also have several versions of temporary marriages. They are popular in Saudi Arabia, where an estimated 7 of 10 marriages are temporary. First there is misyar, travelers or business marriage, for men who travel without their permanent wives and want sexual satisfaction. Mesif, summer holiday contracts, are set up by agents in other countries who specialize in providing girls between age 9 and 16. The marriages end when the vacations end. Girls may be led to think that the marriages will be permanent. Urfi, or customary marriages, are not registered with the state or mosque either. These have the essential parts of Islamic marriage. There's a contract, and the man pays a dowry. Sunni versions are open-ended and terminate whenever the man decides, while Shia muta marriage sets a definite term at the beginning. jurists issue fatwas legalizing temporary marriages, which are based on the practice of Muhammad and the caliphs who succeeded him. The legal rulings define rules, benefits, and limitations, such as the proviso that a man may take back part of the dowry if sex is not provided part of the time. The required wording, she says, "I'm married to you for the known period and the agreed-upon dowry," upon which he answers, "I accept." Why do Muslims practice temporary marriage? Many poor girls are tricked into thinking it's permanent, only to be disappointed when marriage ends without their consent. Women make money through dowries. Divorcees and widows settle for temporary husbands when they're unable to find men to grant them permanent marriage. Couples are able to legally cohabit before marriage or enjoy sex with girlfriends or boyfriends, while avoiding punishment for extramarital sex. Men get cheap sex with no attachments, maintenance, or responsibility. Prostitutes offer their services legally, thereby protecting them from criminal punishment. In most places, when a man and woman agree to be together for a limited amount of time, and he makes a payment to her for sex, it's called prostitution. In fact, some Muslims deride temporary marriage as a thinly disguised cover for prostitution, or a hypocritical way to sidestep morality laws and avoid getting punished for fornication. Women lack the rights given them in permanent marriage, and promiscuous husbands pass sexually transmitted diseases to their innocent wives. It is like a legal loophole. As long as some jurists rule that temporary marriage meets the requirements of including a contract and dowry, it is seen as a valid way to provide what Muslim legislation calls legal sex. Muslim men have a legal right to an unlimited number of sexual partners, as long as they follow religious law. Men can have up to 4 wives at a time. An easy divorce allows for change of wives without any residual effects, such as alimony. Men can have an unlimited number of temporary marriages at the same time or in succession. The Quran permits sex with an unlimited number of slaves, see Surah 70:29 and following, and an unlimited number of concubines, following the Prophet Muhammad's example and legal precedent. A woman, on the other hand, is permitted to have only one husband as a sexual partner. Muslim jurists offer many reasons for men being permitted unlimited numbers of religiously legal sexual partners. They say that men have stronger sex drives, that sex compensates men for providing for women, and that men's burden of maintaining women is greater than women's jealousy. They add that the children of slaves and concubines become free, thereby gaining status, if their fathers recognize them. They claim that Arabs before Islam had fewer restrictions, so Islam added restraint. Divorce is very easy in Islam, for men, though not for women. A Muslim man says in clear terms to his wife that he divorces her, such as, "I divorce you," or even in elusive words if he intends it. He can divorce her for any reasons, or displeasing qualities. The divorce is permanent if he does not revoke it in a probationary period. He can keep her on edge by divorcing her and revoking it 3 times, or combine all 3 in one declaration, called threefold. Muhammad's example serves as an illustration of how Muslim men may approach divorce. Muhammad threatened his wives with divorce for disclosing one of his secrets, Quran 66:3-7. In this short surah or chapter, he threatens all wives with the fire of hell if they act unfaithfully to their husbands in this way or in any way at all. Divorce is very hard on Muslim women, but easy on men. Women have no say in the matter. Women lose their children, home, and assets. She does not receive any kind of alimony or family assets. Her family guardian takes charge of her, so she does not gain freedom. It is hard for a woman who is not a virgin to remarry. However, she can take any remaining dowry with her. Women may divorce husbands only if her contract allows it, if she pays him, if he consents, or if he rejects Islam, because then he no longer qualifies as a guardian. According to Muslim contract law, wives have many legal obligations. They may never deny sex, disobey, voice dissent, object to additional wives, leave home without permission, receive males, or object to husbands hitting them as discipline. Wives must live and go wherever their husbands say. Husbands must maintain their wives, providing sufficient clothes, food, and lodging. Maintenance is a very important concept in Islamic law. Husbands may withhold maintenance if they feel their wives are recalcitrant in any way. Doctors and medical care are not required for sick wives because they are not fulfilling their part of the contract. Maintenance is a means of control and a reason wives must obey. A husband may decide unilaterally to withhold maintenance if he feels his wife is recalcitrant, if she denies him sex at any time, if she disobeys him even momentarily, if she is sick, travels with his permission but for her needs, and if her clothing wears out in less than a season. Muslim jurists have ruled that medical care is not required for sick wives because they are not fulfilling their contractual obligations. Jurists compare a wife to leased property. The owner, her family, must restore the quality of the property, not the tenant, her husband. The Quran states that men are superior to women, saying, "Men are responsible for women because God has given them, men, more than the other women, and because they spend their property for the maintenance of women. Virtuous women are therefore obedient." Quran 4:34. Maintenance is a lever to keep women obedient and unemployed. Many Muslims say that women are equal to men in Islam, and people who hear this wrongly think that they mean equal in the same sense that Westerners do. This is not at all the case. Equal in Quran and Hadith means social equals, namely that wives are roughly equal to their husbands in lineage, status, wealth, and in being free rather than being slaves. This social idea of equality is foremost in the mind of guardians who are trying to arrange marriages with mates of similar status. Equal also means that devout women will receive a reward from Allah as men do. But equal in Islam decidedly does not mean that women have independence, status, legal standing, and personal freedom equal to men. In fact, women need male guardians' permission for many things. Muslim men and women are dramatically different in the area of sexual faithfulness. Only wives must be faithful. Men may have an unlimited number of legal sex partners, legal in both religious and civil sense, since Islamic law is both. Technically, husbands should treat all wives equally, but in reality, even permanent wives are likely to find themselves neglected and cast aside. Adultery, not purity, is typically assumed whenever a man and woman are alone, even briefly. Punishment may follow quickly, even if there is no proof of sexual impropriety. As an example, the Prophet's wife Aisha was left behind in the desert by a caravan. When a friend rescued her and returned her to the caravan, both narrowly escaped being punished for adultery, even though, or perhaps because, she was Muhammad's favorite wife. Muhammad expressed his attitude towards women this way: "Women, give alms, as I have seen that the majority of the dwellers of hellfire were you women. You curse frequently and are ungrateful to your husbands. I've not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you." Hadith by Sahih Bukhari 16301, Munzan Khan. Muhammad said, "The likeness of a virtuous woman among women is like a red-beaked crow among 100 crows." In other words, almost unknown. Ghazali added, "Their deception is awesome and their wickedness is contagious. Bad character and feeble mind are their predominant traits." Other Muslim authorities had this to say about women: "Women are more harmful to men than anything else." Sahih Muslim 366603. "Women are domestic animals, beat them." Tabari 9112. "Women are half-devils." Tabari 3367. Many Muslim men are respectful to women. However, the low status and derision seen in the Quran and lesser authorities is harmful to women and affects the entire Muslim community. Islam considers Muhammad to be the perfect example, the embodiment of the Quran. As such, his example is legal precedent, and Muslims wish to do as he did in every area of life, including marriage. Muhammad practiced and allowed sex with multiple wives, temporary wives, slaves, and concubines. He married and consummated marriage with a 9-year-old girl before she entered puberty. He chose captives for sex, and nearly divorced some of his 13 wives. The Hadith records the life of Muhammad and carries the same authority as the Quran. Muhammad married and had sex with a 9-year-old girl. Today, many Muslims consider girls age 9 to be ready because Muhammad did, regardless of their physical development. A review of female physiology shows how undeveloped 9-year-old girls are. In the United States, the average age of first menstruation is now age 12 and a half. It was only age 17 in 1900, an era which had a lower level of health and nutrition, and therefore was more like Muhammad's Arabia. The average weight of a 19-year-old female is 126 pounds. The average weight of a 9-year-old girl is less than half that, only 62 pounds. Clearly a small girl rather than a woman ready for marriage and intercourse. Islamic law gives women very low status. Women need guardians to handle their affairs. Jurists call them leased property. Their testimony is worth only half a man in court, meaning the testimony of 2 women is worth that of 1 man. Quran Surah 2:282. This hurts her in any dispute with her husband or any man. Women cannot serve as marriage witnesses. Quran 4 says that all men excel, or a degree above, women, meaning that females of all ages are less able than males. Islamic penalties, diyat, for killing a woman are less than that for a man. Females' inheritance is less than males. Rape charges must be proven by 4 eyewitnesses. Without them, she may be flogged for fornication. Females must always be kept concealed, except from close relatives at home. Many Muslims allow no mixing of the sexes and establish separate sections of schools, parks, homes, hospitals, and transportation facilities. Women must conceal femininity with scarf to hide their alluring beauty, or hijab, showing their faces only to their husbands. This is required by Quran 24:32, although Muslim jurists differ on some details, such as on whether bare knees are nakedness. Female circumcision, or genital cutting, is obligatory in many Muslim communities, including at least 26 nations, and Muhammad is said to have allowed it. Muslim men may marry non-Muslim women, but Muslim women cannot marry non-Muslim men because they cannot serve as guardians. Muslims often follow Islamic Sharia law, even when living in Western societies. For example, it is estimated that between 50,000 and 100,000 Muslims are involved in polygamous marriage in the United States. Muslim countries follow Sharia in personal or criminal matters, or both. In Islam, legislation defines marriage and determines obligations. Since marriage is a formal exchange of services defined by contract, law terms are used constantly when discussing marriage, which sounds so strange to Western ears. Muslims use these terms when discussing marriage: contract, obligations, stipulations, jurist, provision, legal principle, reciprocating arrangement, legal ruling, coding, and legislation. They seldom or never use terms like relationship, exchange of vows, counselor, companion, intimacy, ceremony, sexual faithfulness of husbands. Civil, criminal, family, and religious law is the same, with no distinction between them. Law has been codified by jurists over centuries, and obedience is required. This carries great force for Muslims because they believe Allah gave this law, not men or nations. This saying summarizes it. Islam produces jurists, law. Christianity produces theologians, belief. Law requires severe punishment for adultery. Quran 24:3 commands that adultery be punished with flogging, 100 stripes. It must be proven by 4 witnesses or 4 statements by the husband which the wife does not contradict. Quran 24:2-9. Some varieties of Sharia law require stoning to death. A husband, not a wife, can have many legal sexual partners, and a man's testimony is worth twice as much as a woman's in court. So women are most often the target of accusations of adultery. Quran 60:12 commands that men must retaliate when women go to disbelievers. The Quran tells husbands how to correct recalcitrant wives. Quran 4:34 commands husbands to 1. Exhort her, 2. Withhold sex, 3. Slap or hit her, but not deform her, and to withhold maintenance. The Quran assumes that husbands will need to and should discipline wives, but not the reverse. With such directions, it's not surprising that domestic violence is common in Muslim countries. Studies say that 75% of Lebanese women and 85% of Afghan women are victims. Muslim countries with Sharia law like Turkey do not prosecute domestic violence because the Quran promotes the practice and because women's testimony is worth only half of men's. The most troublesome aspects of Muslim marriage are drawn from the Quran and Muhammad, not from renegade Muslims. Those the media often calls extremists actually follow Muhammad the closest. For instance, ISIS is condemned for selling and practicing sex with females enslaved by war. But they're only following the example of the Prophet Muhammad. Muslims and Muslim nations vary in how strictly they follow and enforce Islamic law. But the closer they follow the Quran and Hadith, the more the world sees them as extreme. There is diversity among Muslims regarding marriage practice. Sunni and Shia jurists issue legal rulings which disagree on some things. For example, some soften the impact of Quran 4:34 by interpreting it to mean that a husband could beat his wife with a toothbrush or handkerchief, but do not explain how such a symbolic beating could correct a rebellious wife rather than amuse her. However, the most troublesome aspects of Muslim marriage law, such as wife-beating, polygamy, unlimited temporary marriages, concubines, sex with slaves, obsession with female virginity, cruel punishments for those who violate Islamic law, and unlimited numbers of legal sexual partners for men, are all drawn from the unquestioned authorities of Islam, namely the Quran and the life of the Prophet Muhammad. Muhammad is the root of these problems, not extremist imams and jurists. Nani Darwish remembers the dramatic impact a Hollywood movie had on her during her childhood in Egypt. The movie included a typical Christian marriage ceremony in which the husband promises his exclusive love and sexual faithfulness to his one wife. It showed her a kind of love and unique honor not found in Muhammad and the Quran. Christian marriage, as described in the New Testament, is radically different from Muslim marriage. Christians emphasize an exclusive relationship between one man and one woman, as illustrated by the love seen in Christ Jesus for the church, which is called his bride. Unlike Muslim marriage law, which is used to satisfy males, the core of Christian marriage is a unique relationship based on mutual respect. Allah is unknowable, so cannot serve as an example of intimate love between husband and wife, as Christ does. Christian husbands are not guardians with limited legal obligations who rule their wives. Instead, the New Testament calls husbands to show self-sacrificial agape love. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Love their wives as their own bodies. Ephesians 6:25 and 28. Jesus Christ set a far different example from Muhammad. The key question was not what Islam or the Church has done in the past, but rather what their founders did. Jesus Christ put ministry above personal sexual satisfaction, fought no wars, and took no captives or slaves for sex. Jesus taught marriage between one man and one woman, and allowed divorce only for adultery or desertion. He forbade sex outside a single permanent marriage, including temporary wives and sex with slaves or concubines. Christianity affirms women. It honors women's personal judgment and requires no guardian. Monogamy increases devotion to one's wife and requires sexual faithfulness from both husband and wife. The New Testament prescribes strict limits on divorce. Sex only in one marriage protects all from sexually transmitted disease. It forbids beatings, forced sex, war slavery, and concubines. Modesty is required so that women are not seen as sex objects. Muhammad's example is dramatically different from Jesus Christ. Muhammad used women for personal pleasure, had 11 or 13 wives, thereby breaking the Quran's limit of 4. He prescribed easy ways for men to divorce their wives, but not vice versa. He hadn't approved legal sex outside marriage with temporary wives, slaves, and concubines. Muhammad revealed Quran surahs that allowed polygamy, sex with slaves and captives, wife-beating, and whippings for adulterers. In the Quran, Islam is government and civil law, including civil punishments for moral sins. There's no separation between religion and government, following the example of Muhammad, who was prophet, ruler, and military commander all in one. Christianity, at some times and some places, established civil law, but in the New Testament, Christianity is separate from the government and persecuted by it. The New Testament never prescribes civil penalties for moral and marriage failings, and it strongly opposes the sexual immorality, immodesty, homosexuality, and loose marriage practices common in the United States and other Western countries. Sources include The Message of the Quran Translated and Explained, Reliance of the Traveler, a classic manual of Islamic sacred law, Al-Bukhari Sahih Hadith, The Family Structure in Islam, and Cruel and Usual Punishment.